I'm going to talk a little bit about something I've been thinking about lately and haven't come up with any conclusion about, but I just want to share with everyone because it's kind of an interesting philosophical idea that I came up with. It's this. We all know about the debate about universals. Universals are what philosophers since the time of the Greeks and the Buddha and the Hindus have gone back and forth on for a long time. The debate is basically very simple. It's what connects things of a certain kind together. To keep it brief and simple as possible, let's say you have a red ball in your front yard and a red ball in the living room, maybe in one in your backyard. So you say that there's 3 red balls, and those balls are red. And if you ask somebody what color that ball in the backyard is, they'd say it's red. And the front yard is also red, and the one in the living room is red. So what connects it, what enables us to say there are 3 red balls? Well, it's redness. They're connected by this redness. They're all red. But what is this? Well, some people say it's a universal that pervades the balls. And the universal is existing independent of the balls themselves, or the red itself, the balls themselves, instantiations. So the other side of the debate is that, well, no, there's no eternal redness that is somehow omnipresent and everywhere that instantiates red things. Rather, there are discrete, red things. And when we see them and we notice a similarity between 2 red things, we characterize them as red, generally characterized phenomena. So a linguistic community says, well, we're going to call these things red. And through the force of habit and language, we come to think of those things as red. There's no real property red, independent of red things. The other side of the wall, as first mentioned, believes there is a property independent of things red. The redness can exist independent of things that are red, exist over and above them, eternally everlasting redness. So there's the 2 groups. The realists say there's a real red, and the anti-realists say there's generally characterized phenomena that we think of as red because of the agreement of a linguistic community and the force of habit and language over time. So this is what's called the ness of things, the redness of things, the chairness of things, the bedness of things, the carness of things. Any item you can think of that there's more than one of is a nest. There's a universal connecting them that enables us to say we couldn't even speak without these universals. So there's, there's, if when we see there's a chair in the living room, a chair in the bedroom, we say there's two chairs, or that's a chair. We say that's a chair. The exemplar in our mind is a universal chair. The realists say there's an eternal chairness that exists over and above any chair. And that's what all chairs share. The anti-realists, which includes all the Buddhists, they say, no, it's generally characterized phenomena. That's what they call it, that we just see these things and we say, well, let's kind of agree what we're going to call these things. So they say, well, we'll call them chairs, and after a time we get used to thinking of them as chairs, and they're not eternal. There's no chairness independent of the things. So this goes for what determines the difference between a horse and a cow, or a donkey and a pig. So they say, the realists say there's cowness, that all cows instantiate this thing called cowness that makes them really cows. And donkeys are instantiated by donkeyness that makes them really donkeys. And if it wasn't for cowness and donkeyness, you wouldn't be able to talk about cows and donkeys. So they believe that even independent, the realists believe that there's independent of any donkeys in the world or cows in the world, there's donkeyness and cowness. They believe it's a real essence of things that permeates all things and all animals, animate and inanimate things. It's an essence, a soul of things, so to speak. And there's humanness too, that distinguishes us from cows and other things. So the anti-realists, they say, well, donkeys, pigs, and cows, we see them and we notice similarities among certain things, and we just say, well, let's call those things that look like such and such, that have dewlap and, udders and stuff. And we'll call those cows, and everybody agrees in this linguistic community, and through the force of language and habit over time, we get used to thinking of them as cows. And that's the universal, but in the Buddhist system, that universal is considered unreal. It's considered conceptualized and fabricated and conventional, what's called generally characterized phenomena. And so they think that, Buddhists think that, chairness and all of this is like that too. So to play the devil's advocate, I was thinking about this recently. So basically, it seems like modern science is actually confirming the Nyaya view of an essence of things. A few weeks ago when I was in the airport, it was very early in the morning, and I just sat down to have a coffee around 3 a.m. and some other guy was sitting there. I asked if he could, sit in the same table. I said, sure. And so I asked him where he came from. He just came from India. It was really funny. That was the person, because I have such an affinity with India. And the guy, this is a sidetrack, he flew, and so just for a week, he flew from San Francisco to knock on his mother's door in Kashmir and surprise her. And then he left after a week. But he was a biologist. So this idea that I've been discussing with you was on my mind. So I said to him, I said, well, if you had a tiny, tiny piece of a hair of a pig, and you had a tiny piece of a hair or a scrape of the skin of a donkey, and you looked at it with all your equipment and stuff, could you tell the difference? And he said, yes, he could. So for all animate things and trees and all of these things that are alive, you know, he said you can tell, no matter almost in tiny, tiny pieces. So this kind of confirms what the Nyaya, Narikas, and the Hindus are saying, that there's an essence of things. Now, what this led me to thinking, well, there's the debate about the ness of things is not just about animate objects. It's about inanimate things like chairs. And so I was thinking, well, of course, if you tried to take a little piece of a chair, you wouldn't know it's a chair or a car, where that piece of metal came from, or that piece of wood. But you could with animals. So the whole idea of universals kind of is opened up to, by science, it's getting confirmed really on one end about an essence that pervades all things. That's a lot more complicated, I'm saying, but it seems like on the one side, you can tell and confirm to a certain extent what the Hindu camp said thousands of years ago. And the Buddhists said, no, there's no real essence of things. But of course, when if you take it to inanimate objects, then it's a debate between both sides. It's still going on, by the way. And so that's that. It's a little investigation of universals. If you don't know what they are, you can Google universal. It's kind of a fascinating topic to wrap your, it's wrapped, the best minds have wrapped themselves around it and haven't solved the whole problem yet. They go back and forth. So this is universals part 2. Obviously, I'm still thinking about it. So we left off that universals, according to some, are these a kind of an essence, you could say. Some say that they exist, this essence, or universal, exists independent of the objects that it instantiates. In other words, the universal exists over and above its instantiation. So it could exist even in the complete absence of the things itself. So a chair is known as chairness. The essence of a chair is chairness. And the essence of a jar is jarness. And the essence of a car is carness. And the essence of a cow is cowness, and so forth. But some believe that without a cow, and without a car, without a jar, or without a chair, in the whole world, there would be this universal existing in and of itself. That would be the self of these things or phenomena. So, of course, the Buddhists have a problem with this because it reifies objects. Reification is when you say something is more than what it is. So if you have a jar, that's good enough. But to have a jar and an essence independent of the jar is a problem. But then those that believe in essences and universals existing independent of their instantiations, they say to the Buddhists who don't believe in these essences or universals as real, independent, eternally existing entities, they say, well, then what do you refer to when you say that is a chair or that is a cow? It can't be the particular chair or the cow that we refer to. There has to be some underlying thing that it belongs to, like the chair belongs to, that the cow belongs to. It belongs to some kind of class. And what is the nature of this class? That's the problem. And they say that you cannot speak, the Buddhist adversaries say that you cannot speak without referencing an underlying entity that joins all of these things of a specific kind together. So the Buddhists resolve this by saying, well, you're right. We must refer to a class or a kind, and if you will, a universal. But for us, universals are not real. They don't exist independent of any of their instantiations. They're individuals. They don't exist independent of their manifestations, or so, if you will. So then it is asked of the Buddhists, and what is the nature of this universal that you're talking about that doesn't exist in and above its parts? A great master, Dignaga and Dharmakirti, they came up with an answer to that challenge, and it's called the Apoa theory. And they simply say, Apoa means exclusion. So they say, when we say that a chair is a chair, and it belongs to a class or a kind, the nature of that kind or class is that it exists. It exists as the exclusion of all that it is not. So they don't say that the chair belongs to chairness. They say chair is simply the exclusion of all that's not chair. So when you say a chair is a chair, you're just saying a chair is what it is not. So it's not anything else in the universe. That's way we don't have the reification of some entity existing above the chair itself. The chair is simply not what it is not, and that's it. And this is called, technically, generally characterized phenomena. So when we think of a chair, it's kind of an interesting phenomena that's going on. We're not really referring to any entity above the chair that holds it all together, that holds language together. We're saying that the chair, when we speak of a chair, we eliminate. It's the elimination. We can only think of a chair because we eliminate it from the domain of what it is not. So this doesn't reify anything. It doesn't say by this route you don't have a proliferation of entities existing above their instantiations. And it's a very brilliant formula. And it's a challenge to the whole concept of universals. And so far, no one has defeated it. But the argument continues nevertheless. So those are some more thoughts on universals. So we're continuing on now. Part 3 on universals. And we're in a part that I really don't get so well. But I'm going to speak about what I do know. So let's recap the last two. First of all, we had that universals are what allow us to think about things and communicate with others about things and reason about things. Without universals, naming would be impossible. For example, chair. Just the word chair. If we speak a chair, what are we referring to? Well, we say, oh, I have my chair in my house, so that's good enough. I'll just refer to that and think about that. And the word chair will refer to the chair in my house. Well, if that chair gets destroyed, or what are you going to use? So what we use is called a universal. So one group, the realists, say that universals pervade all their instances. And the anti-realists say they're fictional. They're just created by the agreement of a linguistic community to say that, to call different things by the certain names, like cow is a cow, and you use it long enough and the community habituates to using the word cow, and that word is established in the linguistic community, and that community can spread to the city and this country, and then you have a word that becomes what's called a generally characterized word for a particular phenomena that everybody agrees on. So in this sense, the word is conventional. It's not real. So that's why they call it anti-realist. The realists, as we spoke of previously, they don't agree with this. They say there's an underlying reality that you refer to when you refer to chairs, horses, cows, pigs, so forth, cars, chariots. And that is called a universal. And that can exist over and above all of its parts, whatever it instantiates. It can exist even independently of its examples. So this is where the anti-realists and the realists have very, very different ideas of things. And it's a debate that's been going on from the time of the Greeks and the early Buddhists, the Hindus, for a long, long time. And it's very interesting. And if you understand it well, it can help you to remove error in your thinking, in one's thinking. So what we're getting to tonight is the problem that, anti-realists face, that they're accused of by their realist and antagonists, who say that, well, you're saying that when you see a chair or something, your eye and so forth never comes in contact with anything that's a chair. Because the anti-realists, they say that whatever impinges on your mind, you categorize as this or that, and you think in terms of the name associated with that object. And that there's nothing that is in a chair itself that reveals itself as a chair or a cow or a pig. It's just that you don't come in contact with that in an anti-realist interpretation. You only come in contact with the visible form impinging on your consciousness, leaving an imprint which is categorized through experience, and the name cow, pig, and so forth comes up. But it comes up, interestingly enough, not categorically like like you would through a Rolodex or a dictionary, your brain storing all of these words, and you're seeing this image and you're looking for a cow or something, or a dog or a pig, and you see it defined in a little dictionary called your brain. It's not like that at all. What the anti-realists are saying is, you don't even do that. You isolate it from everything that it's not, and that's what you're seeing. So the argument against this, it's like biologists do, and scientists do when they make an isolate, when they're looking for something, they don't look for the thing sometimes. That's how the word isolate, isotope, and all of this comes from. They isolate by removing what the thing is not, then you have it. When you go to the refrigerator looking for your peanut butter, you might have to, eliminate the milk, the cottage cheese, the bread, and so forth until you find your peanut butter. And then you go, oh, peanut butter's there. So we do it all the time. So you might not even have to name your peanut butter and say, oh, I found my peanut butter, because after you eliminated everything in the fridge and your peanut butter is there, you're just so happy, you just want to make your sandwich. You don't think about it as peanut butter or anything else. So it's called the APOA theory. They kind of say that we know things by elimination. So now we've covered all of this last two things on universal. So now the part that I'm working on really hard is the Gelugpa view, because bless their hearts, the Gelugpa is trying to satisfy everybody. For the anti-realists, they criticize the realists. The realists criticize the anti-realists, saying that they're locked in their head and it's counterintuitive, it's circular, and it's useless, this whole philosophy of theirs. And moreover, the realists say, with their system where you're just dealing with images impinging on your senses, your senses are never in contact with the real world. So you're living in a completely conceptual domain. It's great, isn't it? Talking about being in your head. So the Gelugpas, they see this criticism as very serious, you know. So they try and make a bridge between the anti-realists, Dharmakirti and Dignaga, and the Nyaya, or the Narikas, who are the main Hindu antagonists, along with others too. And they say, well, actually, the realists have a little bit of a point, maybe not 100%, but when you see things like a chair, you don't actually see the universal as the realists say, and you see some underlying reality that links all chairs together. But you see something there, a commonality in all things. You see something there that's, you know, all trees share, all chairs share, all cats and dogs share. And you see something that allows you to think that a cow is not a horse and a dog is not a cat. And what you see is not purely linguistically derived. You actually see some kind of attenuated commonality with your eyes, ears. Ears hear sound, smells, fragrances, tastes, flavors, sensations, that we actually do come in contact with the outside world and can identify these things in the things themselves. But where they differ from the realists is the Gelugpas. They say, well, although this is true, we don't go as far as saying that this universal that we see in things exists independent of the things, which a really pure realist says. So the anti-realist and the realist, between them, the Gelugpas kind of find a middle ground that's not one or the other. And this is called the moderate realist view, or I would call it a modified realist view. And they say that when you see something, you see first it as like a mere chair, unelaborated, and something that all chairs share, but doesn't exist independent of the chairs. And so they are saying you kind of see a universal, but it's not really quite a universal because it doesn't exist independently, like a true realist would say. So they don't go as far as saying it's purely linguistic, like Dharmakirti, Dignaga say, that it's purely a linguistic connection that we see, that we actually do see something in things, whether we're really conscious of it or not, that tells us that it's a tree, that there's a real commonality between things. And so this is called the moderate realist view. And they are accused of, by the Sakya and others, probably the Kagyu too, for having their feet in kind of like two boats, you know, that two incompatible realms, and they're not fully conceptualists like Dignaga and Dharmakirti, and they're not fully realists like the Nyaya, Narika, and their gang, Kumarila, and Udaya Takara, and all of these great thinkers in the Hindu camp that really presented some very, very convincing arguments. And so this is the last of my 3 videos, partly done for myself, on the universals. And I'll probably revisit it a year from now or so to see if I made any progress in understanding this.